The cold night air hit my face like a slap. I stood on the sidewalk, the heavy suitcases biting into my hands, watching the front door of the house I had shared with my husband slam shut. The sound echoed in the sudden silence, a final, brutal punctuation mark on the end of my marriage. Just moments before, I had been inside, standing in the entryway, numb as David's voice, cold and flat, delivered the words, "I think it's best if you leave, Clara, now." My bags, already packed from the argument that had raged for hours, sat by the door, a silent testament to the inevitable. His mother, Eleanor, stood just behind him in the living room archway, a look of grim satisfaction on her face, her arms crossed. His father, Arthur, hovered awkwardly nearby, refusing to meet my eyes. "Leave?" I'd managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. "David, this is my home." "Not anymore," he'd said, his eyes avoiding mine. "It's my family's home, and we don't think this is working." "We," not he. "We." The word hung in the air, heavy with the weight of Eleanor's influence, of their collective decision to discard me. The finality of the door slamming, the click of the lock echoing in the night was physical as much as emotional. It stole my breath, sent a shockwave of disbelief and pain through my body. I was out, just like that, kicked out, with nowhere to go, and only the 2 suitcases containing the hastily packed fragments of my life. My marriage to David had never been a fairy tale, but I hadn't expected it to end like this. I wasn't from their world. The Millers were established, well off, their family name woven into the history of this leafy, affluent suburb. I came from a different background, hard-working, middle-class, proud, but without the generational wealth or social connections they took for granted. From the moment Mark introduced me, his mother, Eleanor, made it clear I was an unwelcome intrusion. Her disapproval wasn't loud or vulgar. It was subtle, insidious, delivered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and a voice dripping with false sweetness. My clothes were interesting. My job was sweet for someone like you. My family was simple. She questioned every decision David and I made, inserted herself into our finances, our plans, our disagreements. David was a good man in many ways. Kind, gentle, but weak. Terribly weak when it came to his mother. He was the golden son, used to being doted on, unable to tolerate her disapproval. He tried to mediate, to smooth things over, but he never truly stood up to her. Over the years, I watched him become more and more molded by her expectations, less and less the independent man I fell in love with. He wanted peace at any cost, and increasingly the cost was me. Arthur, his father, was largely passive. He seemed to like me well enough, but he deferred to Eleanor in everything. Their marriage seemed a silent agreement. She ran the show, he stayed out of the way. The conflict had escalated in recent months. My own career had started to take off. I was good at what I did in marketing, and I'd recently landed a promotion that came with a significant pay raise. I was contributing more to our joint accounts, building up our savings, feeling a growing sense of confidence and independence. This, I quickly learned, was a threat to Eleanor. A woman with her own money, her own success, was not someone she could easily control or dismiss. The argument tonight had started over something seemingly small, a disagreement about renovations on the house, but Eleanor had quickly inserted herself, twisting my practical suggestions into accusations of me trying to take control, trying to push her vision for the house aside, even implying I was somehow trying to gain financial leverage over David and the family assets. It was absurd, paranoid. But she delivered it with such conviction, weaving in every past perceived slight and insecurity, that David, tired and caught in the middle, finally snapped under her pressure. He didn't accuse me of anything specific or true. He just crumbled, overwhelmed by his mother's relentless attack and his own inability to defend me or stand up to her. And in his weakness, he chose the path of least resistance, removing the source of his discomfort, me. So here I was, Standing outside in the dark, the cold seeping into my bones, the ornate front door of the Miller house a stark, unwelcoming barrier. Discarded, just like an unwanted piece of furniture. The shock began to give way to a searing pain, a deep, visceral hurt that came not just from the abandonment by my husband, but from the triumphant, cold look on my mother-in-law's face. She had won. She had finally gotten rid of me. Standing on that sidewalk, utterly alone, watching the lights inside the house that held my life, my marriage, my future just moments ago, I felt a profound sense of disorientation. It was more than just being kicked out, it was being erased. The speed and coldness with which David acted, clearly influenced by his mother, was a brutal confirmation of how fragile my position in that family truly was. All my efforts to fit in, to be accepted, to prove my worth, had been meaningless. They hadn't seen me. They had only seen an outsider to be tolerated at best, eliminated at worst. The pain of David's betrayal was immense. The man who vowed to love and cherish me had just thrown me out like garbage. But beneath that pain, seeing Eleanor's triumphant face etched in my memory, a different feeling began to solidify. A fierce, burning resentment. She had orchestrated this. She had won this round. But the game wasn't over, not by a long shot. In that moment of utter despair, a cold, hard resolve formed. I wouldn't just survive. I would make them regret the day they underestimated me. The first few nights were a blur of desperate phone calls and humbling favors. A college friend, Sarah, who lived in a tiny apartment across town, took me in, offering her couch and a shoulder to cry on. The shock slowly wore off, replaced by waves of grief, anger, and terrifying uncertainty. I was married, technically, but abandoned. I had nowhere to live permanently. My finances were tied up in joint accounts that David could likely freeze. My future felt like a vast, empty void. Sarah listened patiently, offering practical advice and emotional support. She helped me contact a lawyer. A quick, expensive consultation that confirmed my fears about accessing funds and the likely lengthy, messy divorce process ahead. The Miller name carried weight in this town. Fighting them legally would be an uphill battle. In the depths of that first week, curled up on Sarah's couch, feeling utterly defeated, my mind kept replaying the scene at the house. David's cold eyes, Arthur's avoidance, and Eleanor's chilling smirk. That smirk, it was the face of victory. She had wanted me gone, and she had achieved it. And then, amidst the haze of despair, my mind snagged on something else. Something concrete, expensive, and utterly controlled by me, even now. Eleanor's 70th birthday party. Eleanor Miller's 70th birthday wasn't just any party. It was going to be the event of the year for their social circle. She had been planning it for months, dropping not-so-subtle hints about the scale and grandeur she expected. A black tie affair at the exclusive country club, a live jazz band, a seated dinner for over 100 guests, custom-made invitations, a ridiculous multi-tiered cake. Eleanor spared no expense, or rather, expected no expense to be spared. And she had, with her usual manipulative grace, convinced David, and through him me, that I was the perfect person to plan it. "Olivia has such a knack for details, dear," she told David, loud enough for me to hear. "And I'm just too busy with my charity work." It was framed as a compliment, an honor. I knew it was a test, a hoop to jump through, a chance to prove I was worthy of being a Miller wife. I had poured months of my time and effort into planning that party. Countless meetings with venue managers, caterers, florists, the band leader. Hours spent agonizing over invitation wording, seating charts, menu options. More significantly, I had paid for a substantial portion of it. Eleanor was old-fashioned. She expected the children, meaning David and me, to contribute significantly to such a milestone celebration. David, always eager to please his mother and avoid conflict, had readily agreed. And since my income had recently increased, a large chunk of my money I had earned through my own hard work, had gone into paying the hefty deposits required to book everything. The country club deposit, the caterer down payment, the band's booking fee, the invitations that had already been printed and mailed. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, paid from the joint account that was now inaccessible to me, drawn primarily from the funds I had contributed. Lying on Sarah's couch, staring at the ceiling, a cold, dark thought began to form. Eleanor's party. The party I planned. The party I paid for. The party that was supposed to be her moment of triumph, her grand celebration. She had kicked me out, discarded me, tried to erase me, and felt she had won. She was probably back in that house right now, feeling relieved, planning her perfect birthday celebration, the one I had worked so hard on and paid for without a second thought for where I was or how I was surviving. That was the debt of humiliation, of betrayal, of being treated as disposable. And the party. The party was the currency. A chilling clarity settled over me. The grief and pain were still there, a dull ache, but they were joined now by a cold, hard determination. I couldn't fight the Millers legally right now. I couldn't force David to care. But I had control over one thing: their precious party. I started to formulate a plan, not a chaotic emotional reaction, a calculated strategic strike. It had to be clean, effective, and public enough to ensure Eleanor felt the full weight of the consequences. First, I needed to secure my own situation. Living on Sarah's couch wasn't sustainable. I used what little cash I had on hand and managed to access a small, separate savings account I had opened years ago, keeping it just for emergencies. A foresight born, ironically, from the general instability of dealing with the Millers. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a security deposit and first month's rent on a tiny, no-frills studio apartment in a less affluent part of town. Moving in felt like another step down, a physical manifestation of being kicked out. But it was mine, my own space, a sanctuary. Next, I focused on work. My job was my anchor, my source of independence. I talked to my boss, explained I was going through a difficult personal situation, but was fully committed to my work. I poured all my energy into it, working late, taking on extra projects. I needed the money, yes, but the structure and the sense of accomplishment were also vital to rebuilding my shattered self-esteem. I was good at my job. I was competent, reliable, successful on my own merits, something the Millers never seemed to acknowledge. All the while, I was quietly gathering my resources for the other matter, the party. I found the folder with all the party contracts and receipts. I had copies of the bank statements showing the significant deposits made from the joint account, detailing the dates and amounts paid to the country club, the caterer, the band, the printer for the invitations. Proof that my money, funneled through the joint account, had paid for this lavish event. This wasn't just theoretical leverage, it was financial and logistical control. The party was scheduled for a Saturday evening, about 6 weeks after I was kicked out. Invitations had gone out about 2 weeks prior, meaning guests had already RSVP'd. Excitement would be building. This was crucial. The closer to the date, the more disruptive a cancellation would be. During this time, I had zero direct contact with David or his parents. My lawyer had sent a standard letter to David, initiating divorce proceedings, which likely caused its own stir. I imagined the conversations happening in that house, furious, blaming me for the legal action, probably dismissing me as ungrateful, maybe even unaware that I held this particular card. Then, about a week before the party, David called me. His voice was tentative, awkward. "Clara?" "It's David." "I know," I said, keeping my voice neutral, cold. Look, Mom's party is next week. We realized we don't have the final head count from the caterer, and the band leader called. He had a question about the setup. Since you handled everything, could you just send us the details? I felt a cold amusement spread through me. They were so used to me fixing everything, managing everything, being the invisible labor behind their perfect lives, that even after kicking me out, they still expected me to perform my duties for Eleanor's grand event. They didn't even consider that I might not want to help, or that I held all the keys. You want me to send you the details for Eleanor's party? I repeated slowly, letting the absurdity hang in the air. Yeah, if you could just email over the vendor contacts, the contracts, final guest list, everything you have, he said, sounding slightly annoyed now, as if I was being unreasonable. This was my confirmation. They were clueless. They had no idea how much I had paid, or that my name was on most of the communication with vendors, even if David's name was technically on the joint account used for payment. I don't think I'll be doing that, David, I said, my voice still calm. What? Why not? It's Mom's 70th. You can't just bail. Bail. I couldn't help but laugh, a short, sharp, humorless sound. You kicked me out, David. Remember, you and your mother. You threw me out of my home, cut me off, treated me like I was nothing. And now you expect me to help plan and manage your mother's lavish party? His voice became defensive. That's different. This is about Mom. You already did all the work. And I paid for a good chunk of it too, David. Thousands of dollars from my income, which you conveniently forgot when you cut me off. He was silent for a moment. Then his voice tightened. You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't do anything to ruin Mom's birthday. My smile was cold as ice, even though he couldn't see it. Wouldn't I? Watch me. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anticipation. The time had come. The conversation with David was a pivotal moment. Hearing him, after weeks of silence regarding my welfare, call only about the party, treating me like an employee who had slacked off on my duties, solidified my resolve completely. It wasn't just about the passport anymore. It was about the sheer, breathtaking entitlement of the Miller family. They believed they could treat people, me, with utter disregard, discard them when inconvenient, and still expect them to fulfill their obligations and maintain the carefully constructed facade of their perfect lives. The cold amusement I felt wasn't cruel. It was the liberating realization of my own power in this specific situation. I wasn't acting out of petty vengeance. I was delivering a consequence proportionate to their actions, using the very tools they had unknowingly given me. This wasn't about making them suffer just for the sake of it. It was about forcing them to acknowledge my existence, my contribution, and the cost of their cruelty. It was about taking back control of the narrative and my own sense of agency. The fear of being alone and defeated was replaced by the quiet strength of a strategist preparing for battle. I didn't delay. The party was in 6 days. My first call was to the country club events manager. I identified myself, confirmed my name was on the contract, and stated calmly, I am calling to inform you that the reservation for the Miller 70th birthday party on Saturday, date, is canceled, effective immediately. The manager sounded surprised. Canceled? Ms. Clara, is everything all right? We have a significant deposit paid. Yes, I am aware of the deposit, I said, my voice steady. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen and irreversible circumstances, the event cannot proceed. Please consider this official notification. I understand the terms of the contract regarding cancellations within a week of the event. Those terms meant they kept the entire deposit, a significant sum. I see, the manager stammered. I will process this immediately. We'll send confirmation of the cancellation and forfeiture of the deposit to the contact on file. My contact info was still the primary one on the contract. Next call, the caterer. Same process. Confirm my name, canceled the event, acknowledged the lost down payment, same shocked reaction, same confirmation of lost funds. Then the band, the florist, the custom cake designer. Each call was brief, professional, and delivered the same devastating news. Money lost, services canceled at the last minute, the ripple effect of chaos spreading through Eleanor's meticulously planned event. I could almost picture it. The vendors calling Eleanor or David, confirming the cancellations, explaining the lost deposits. the dawning horror on their faces as they realized I hadn't been bluffing. The frantic scramble to try and salvage something, only to find that at this late stage, rescheduling anything or finding replacements was impossible, and the money was gone. Thousands and thousands of dollars. Vanished. But simply canceling wasn't enough. Eleanor deserved to know why this was happening. And the guests, many of whom had witnessed her condescending behavior towards me over the years, deserved to know the truth. I drafted an email. I exported the guest list from the party planning software I still had access to. They hadn't even bothered to change the password. I composed the message carefully. Subject: Important notice regarding Eleanor Miller's 70th birthday celebration body. Dear esteemed guests, it is with regret that I must inform you that Eleanor Miller's 70th birthday celebration, scheduled for this Saturday, the 13th at the country club, has been canceled. As you know, I had the privilege and responsibility of planning this event. I invested significant time, effort, and personal financial resources into creating a memorable evening. However, shortly after the invitations were mailed, my husband, David Miller, at the behest of his mother, Eleanor Miller, unexpectedly and without just cause, kicked me out of our home and effectively ended our marriage. Given these circumstances, and the profound betrayal and hurt caused by their actions, I cannot in good conscience proceed with hosting and executing an event celebrating the very person who orchestrated my sudden and cruel expulsion from my home and family. The deposits paid for the venue, catering, entertainment, and other services, totaling a substantial sum, much of which came from my personal earnings, are non-refundable due to the late notice of cancellation. This is an unfortunate consequence of the situation. I apologize for any inconvenience this cancellation may cause to your plans. While the reason for this cancellation is deeply personal, I felt it necessary to provide clarity given my central role in the event's organization. Thank you for your understanding. Sincerely, Clara. I read it over several times. It was factual. It was calm. It stated the consequences, the lost money, and it laid the blame squarely where it belonged, on Eleanor and David, and the act of kicking me out. It didn't sound vindictive, merely stating cause and effect, but it was devastatingly effective. With a deep breath, I attached the screenshots of Emily's messages from the previous story scenario. This adds another layer of proof of the family's character, assuming this is a continuation or related series. Or perhaps screenshots of my previous messages to David pleading about the party details after being kicked out and his cold responses. Something to show their continued demands on me despite my situation. Let's go with the messages as they directly relate to this party cancellation. Yes, screenshots of David asking for the details and my refusing, followed by a screenshot of his threat, "You wouldn't dare." I selected the entire guest list. My finger hovered over the send button. This was it. The sweet payment. I clicked send. The phone call started almost immediately. Not from Eleanor or David, not yet. From confused and shocked guests. "Clara, what is going on? We just got your email. Is it true? Are you really?" I answered calmly, repeating the essential facts from the email, explaining that I was indeed kicked out and simply could not in good conscience host the party. Many expressed shock and sympathy. Others were clearly uncomfortable. Then came the calls from the Millers, David first, furious, sputtering. "What did you do? The club just called, and the caterer. Everything's canceled. The money's gone. How could you?" "How could I, David?" I asked, my voice still calm. "How could you kick your wife out of your home? How could your mother orchestrate it? How could you expect me to throw a party celebrating the woman who destroyed my life using money I earned? This is just the consequence of your actions." He yelled, he threatened, he tried to backtrack, claiming I was overreacting, that being kicked out wasn't a big deal, that I could always come back and talk. The contrast between his current panic and his earlier cold dismissal was striking. Then Eleanor called. Her voice was trembling with rage. "You spiteful little thing! How dare you! Ruining my birthday, my 70th birthday, after all I've done for you!" "All you've done for me, Eleanor?" I countered, a mirthless smile touching my lips. "You mean undermining me, criticizing me, treating me like an unwanted stain on your perfect family, and finally, getting your son to kick me out of my home? Yes, you've done so much, and this is me paying back the debt for all of it." She shrieked. She cried. She cursed me. She threatened to sue me for the cost of the party. "You can try, Eleanor," I said, "but I have the contract showing I was the primary planner and payer. I have bank statements showing where the money came from, and I have witnesses and evidence regarding why I was kicked out and your role in it. It will be very public. Are you sure you want all of that aired in court?" Silence. She knew I was right. Her perfect facade, already cracked by the cancellation, would crumble completely under legal scrutiny. Her reputation in their carefully guarded social circle would be in tatters. I hung up. My hand was steady now. The adrenaline was still high, but the knot of pain and fear that had resided in my stomach for weeks had loosened. It was replaced by a powerful, exhilarating sense of liberation. I had done it. I had taken their weapon, my involvement in the party, and turned it into my own instrument of justice. The immediate aftermath was messy, filled with gossip, speculation, and awkwardness within the Millers' social sphere. Some people sided with Eleanor, calling me vindictive, but just as many, perhaps, who had witnessed Eleanor's behavior over the years, or were simply appalled by the idea of kicking a spouse out so abruptly, expressed quiet admiration or outright support for me. Aunt Carol, if using the connected story idea, might reach out with genuine concern and support. David made a few more attempts to contact me, ranging from angry demands to pathetic pleas. I didn't respond. The man I married had been replaced by a puppet of his mother's will, a man who chose convenience over conviction, family pressure over his wedding vows. There was nothing left for me there. Eleanor faced the social consequences, the ruined party, the lost money, and the circulating story about why it was canceled. Her cruelty exposed, not by gossip, but by my calm, factual email. Her 70th birthday became a symbol of her own actions, a monument to her attempt to control and discard me. The sweet payment was her humiliation, her financial loss, and the damage to her carefully crafted image. Meanwhile, I focused relentlessly on rebuilding my own life. The little studio apartment became my safe haven. My job became my foundation. I worked hard, proved myself, and within a year, I was promoted again. My financial independence grew stronger with every paycheck. I met new people, built a support system of friends who valued me for who I was, not who my husband's family expected me to be. I pursued hobbies I had put aside. I decorated my tiny apartment exactly the way I wanted, a space that was entirely mine, free from criticism or control. The divorce went through, quietly and efficiently. With the evidence I had regarding the party funds and the circumstances of my departure, the settlement was fair, reflecting my contributions and the abrupt end to the marriage. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. The pain of the past was still a part of me, a reminder of the battle I had fought. But it didn't define me. The cold sidewalk, the slammed door, the cruel smirk, they were memories of a time when I was vulnerable. The canceled party, the quiet spread of the truth, the rebuilding of my life. They were testaments to my resilience, my strength, and my refusal to be a victim. I had been kicked out, abandoned, and underestimated, but I had taken the debt they thought I owed them. My silence, my compliance, my contribution to their perfect facade, and paid it back in a currency they understood: public exposure, significant financial loss, and the utter destruction of their carefully planned celebration. It was a sweet payment indeed, My life now is peaceful, independent, and authentically mine. I am no longer defined by my marriage or my in-laws' expectations. I am defined by my own strength, my work, and the community I have built around myself. The path was hard, but the destination, a life lived on my own terms, was worth every step. So that's my story. Kicked out, betrayed, I found a way to turn the tables and deliver justice on my own terms, using the very event they thought would solidify their triumph as the instrument of their downfall. Now I ask you, having been kicked out of your home and marriage in such a cruel and public manner, and having the power to cancel their significant, expensive event. A. Do you think canceling the party was a justified and necessary act of self-preservation and justice? B. Do you think it was a step too far, creating irreparable damage, even if they deserved consequences? And looking at the long-term outcome. A. Do you believe the sweetest revenge is the public cancellation and humiliation? B. Or is the sweetest revenge simply building a successful, happy life completely independent of them, making their actions irrelevant? What would you choose?